Hi everyone, I am Euclides Coimbra, your host in the Leaders in CI podcast. Leaders in CI is the place for business leaders interested in Kaizen, lean, business improvement in general. Today we are joined by Yvonne Gaissmaier and Doug Walls, both from Sonova Corporation. Sonova is a global leader in hearing care solutions with over 17.5 employees, K employees, 1,000 employees, and the sales of 3.7 billion Swiss francs. Yvonne is VP of Global Growth Initiatives. Hi, Yvonne. She's based in Switzerland, and she's responsible for deploying CI in growth areas, including sales, marketing, office, innovation, and new product development. Doug is VP of Global Continuous Improvement based in the US, and is responsible for deploying CI in operations and supply chain in general. So, Yvonne and Doug, welcome to the Leaders in CI podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure. Can you briefly introduce yourself and your background? Let's start with Yvonne. Tell us more about your role. What's your day-to-day like in Sonova in growth and innovation?
Thank you. I joined Sonova 3 years ago. I've been in different areas, functions, different industries for the last 25 years, working in procurement, supply chain, and then most recently the last 10 years or so always in sales and commercial roles. And 3 years ago, I joined Sonova to take over the Sonova X program on the growth side, working closely with Doug to do two things. One is to help all our businesses deliver their growth objectives around revenue and profitable revenue. And then secondly, to install a lean culture and a continuous improvement culture and mindset across the organization. So our day really is driven by what our customers need. It can include Kaizen facilitation through to deploying Hoshin, Kanri, and strategy deployment, to going to Gemba in a daily management and giving feedback on how the teams can improve further, or just getting into the specific projects and helping to drive new ideas around how we drive our commercial processes.
Thank you, Yvonne. Very interesting. And it's not common to have continuous improvement, Kaizen lean in growth areas to increase revenue and sales, but we will come back to that. Now, what about you, Doug? Tell us a little bit more about your role and your experience in Sonova.
So overall for me, over 30 years experience in manufacturing, and quite honestly, a lot of it's been in continuous improvement, probably over the last half of that. Been with Sonova over 5 years now. And so for us, it really is. And again, as the counterpart of Yvonne, I support and lead the continuous improvement group. And that is basically manufacturing, supply chain, but also does include human resources, finance, and IT. So those three back office functions also fall under the continuous improvement realm. For us, it's really about driving waste. So we really focus on a lot of productivity improvements, streamlining the value chain within our organizations. I think it's obviously for us, it's been a journey. We've started out really with a white paper, and so it's something that we built up over the past 5 years. Day to day is a lot. I think my favorite day is always Friday. Not only because it's the end of the week, but generally speaking, that's when we have all of our continuous improvement, all of our CI Kaizen report outs generally on Friday. So it's a really cool day to just sit back and listen in on all the presentations. And generally speaking, there's usually 2 to 3 per week that I'm sitting in on for those. A lot of the other stuff, obviously, day to day, it varies and it depends, kind of quite honestly, like with what Yvonne goes through in the growth. It depends on what the business need is at the time. We've got several big projects going that are taking an awful lot of time and a pretty heavy CI focus. So those are we're spending a lot of time on those aspects right now. And then obviously it kind of just depends on what's going on. You know, we're in the process of also refreshing some of our materials and those types of things as a team. So never a dull moment. for sure when it comes to continuous improvement.
Thank you, Doug. This is quite interesting, this podcast, because it's not common to have a company, multinational company, that covers the whole world, and that is implementing business excellence, continuous improvement in the whole of the company, in all the areas of the company, and has two VPs in charge of continuous improvement. So I'm sure this podcast will be quite interesting, because Kaizen and Lean is being expanded from manufacturing, where it started, to all areas of the company. So once again, thank you for being here. And we have three topics, basically. One about the start of CI in Sonova, in the both areas, manufacturing and growth areas. We will also talk about leadership, engagement, immersion. And another topic will be how to assure CI is delivering business impact, is contributing to results of the company. So let's start with the first one, about the start of CI in Sonova. And I know that Sonova started deployment of a CI culture, Kaizen Lean culture, and a system also 5 years ago. Where did you start? Was it in operations or growth areas, or both at the same time? Can we start with you, Doug?
Yep. Yeah, so we started in obviously within the four walls of the manufacturing. And as I mentioned, really we didn't have a system. So there was not a formal continuous improvement system in Sonova. So, and obviously that was one of the really appealing pieces to coming to Sonova, was to be able to kind of help create that. But that being said, and we kind of have a phased model approach in regards to how we deploy the tools. So we've developed that. And the cool thing is we've been able to kind of, based on a lot of backgrounds that I had and my boss and his boss, with some of the other companies, we've been able to kind of create a hybrid kind of deployment model. So, and it really was, we focused on really going deep versus wide. So we didn't want to have a very wide deployment until we had a really good understanding of some of the tools we were putting in place. And so for us, it really was about finding the one location to start and being able to put something in place, and then have something where we could share with the rest of the organization. There's nothing better, quite honestly, than having something that people can physically touch and see. Yeah, to really go back and it makes it a little bit easier for the benchmarking and being able to do this in other facilities. So we did a lot of that, especially with a lot of the core foundational tools. And realistically, probably for the first 3 years, that was a big focus for us, was our manufacturing site. So once we would get something to where it was in a very good position, we would hold knowledge sharing calls. We would send people over to these locations so they could see exactly how it was done. And they'd be able to, it was easier to basically kind of, transfer that knowledge to the other sites. So, and we're continuing that. And obviously, as everything continues to morph for us, we're continuing that with some of the different tools now. So now we've gone from probably some of the more what we call development tools to more of the stabilization tools that we're putting in place now. Mm-hmm. But certainly started within the four walls of the factory, and then that's kind of matriculated out to the rest of the business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about your area, Yvonne? Let us know your CI story in Sonova. Where did you start? And what worked, what didn't work since you started?
We started a bit after the operations team got going, and I joined about halfway through. You said it earlier, because it's not so common to take the continuous improvement tools, mindset principles, and apply them to growth. So people around who had the experience initially looked for an area where it really can make a big impact. And there was an obvious area in one of our businesses that was very good in working with existing customers and growing the business with new product launches. But they were maybe not quite as successful as the market shifted, and we needed to learn how to grow with new customers, how to acquire customers, how to retain them, and more work on lead generation and things like that. So that was initially the kind of the launch project to really put in place core tools such as daily management and problem solving, but also some of the functional capabilities around funnel management, lead generation, and really showing teams that might have unconsciously used processes in the past, how you can work more efficiently, more streamlined, and towards a common goal by everybody having the same processes in the same language. And in some cases, that was a standardization and formalization of how they have been working, but there was also an introduction of new things that they had not done before. And I think this is one of the things that has worked quite well as we started to get going, to find this one lighthouse where you could really demonstrate to the business what the impact of a different way of working is, but leverage what was already there and then supplement and add to it with some of the core lean tools, really. And then from there, we started to then deploy it to other businesses. And we're now even extending it to our foundation. Sonova has the Hear the World Foundation, where we have help kids around the world. And we also start to do this with external partners. When it comes to what works and what didn't work, I think what worked quite well was that between both operations and the growth side, we always insisted on the same basic tools. To me, there is no difference in running a problem-solving exercise in a sales area, a marketing area, HR, or operations. You always fall back on the same principles. Daily management, whether you're winning or losing, and what's the gap, and how do you go about it, and how do you countermeasure, there shouldn't be any difference. So quite early on, there was a consistency around the basic tools, and also a consistent understanding of how do we bring them out into the field, and how do we deploy them. I think the second thing that worked really well, and definitely on the growth side, is start with a real pain point for the business. We have amazing teams out there that are handling and working with our customers every day. The last thing we want is to distract them from serving our customers. So if we really want to make an impact, it needs to be something that's a real pain point to them, as opposed to us driving a central agenda that may or may not reflect what their pains are. And then I think lastly, back to the point about growth is maybe not such a common area. We made sure that we started with something that was somewhat known. So funnel management, lead generation, we're not the first company to invent this. So there was something that we could build upon rather than coming up with something fancy that nobody had ever heard about. When it comes to what didn't work, I think we had to learn over time the balance between tools and mindset. We might have gotten down the path of tools, many tools, build a big toolbox too quickly, and then people got distracted between the purpose of a tool and what we're really trying to do here, which is help the business grow and try to find efficiencies. Fancy words, we're still stuck with some of the Japanese words, but as soon as you bring it down to plain common English, Spanish, whatever your first language is, suddenly people go, that's what you mean. So it becomes a lot less intimidating. And we're putting a lot of focus into having a common language, but also very simple language around that. And then I would say last but not least, and I'm a big advocate of that, we sometimes might have forgotten to explain to people the why we're doing this. Because we assumed it was so obvious, because many of us have been coming from this school, but if you work with people who have never been down the route of continuous improvement, really insisting on the why we're doing this and how this is going to help them, the famous what's in it for me. We're spending a lot more time on this now than we did initially, where we just assumed people knew that. So those will be my big things as in reflection.
I'll probably add something in regards to that and with Yvonne, and I think I definitely echo the what's in it for me piece. I think the change management piece, quite honestly, is something that maybe was underestimated initially, especially in some of the areas. And then I think obviously, the other piece with that is just making sure that the folks really can absorb what we're trying to teach them and show them. And I think over time, I think that there was a little bit, I look back on some of the things we did, we probably tried to do a little too much too fast sometimes. And so anyway, and sometimes it's better to just slow down to make sure that they get the absorption and the understanding there. And so that's a little bit of a lesson learned for us for sure.
Yeah, yes, we see more and more companies focusing on the core tools that are connected to change management, daily management, problem solving, and also the Hoshin for top management for the big change. And also companies worried with the balance, like you said, Yvonne, between the tools and the mindset. Because if you want to implement TPM, you cannot, there are dozens of tools, for example, manufacturing. And I also appreciated your comments about the basic tools in sales and marketing, lead generation, funnel management. Also, they are kind of like similar to SMED, that is a very basic tool, but in sales. Yes, and this one is for Doug. Do you have a Toyota house or TPM house type of model? You said something, but do you have it? Can you describe it quickly?
Yeah, so we have a phased approach. So, and we have it broken down in basically 3 waves. Now the difference is we don't once we finish a wave, we don't have any type of reviews, exit, celebrations, those kinds of things. It's really just more of a stair step foundation for the folks. But so within these 3 waves, we have what we call the developmental tools. So within those, and those are the ones more along the lines of the core foundational stuff. So like you mentioned, daily management, leadership standard work, Gemba, Hoshin, Kanri, problem solving. Those are the ones basically that everyone is expected to know and have an understanding and deploy as they see fit, either within operations or some of the back office functions. Then once those are in place, because we kind of consider those behavioral tools, because those really are, it kind of helps set the foundation and the culture for your organization. So if you can find yourself where you can be disciplined on leadership standard work or disciplined on daily management, these types of things, and understand when to use problem solving effectively, that's going to help you as you get into probably some of the more what we call stability tools. And that's where our wave 2 is. And that's where currently most of our manufacturing facilities, most of our ops are in, is wave 2 now. And that's more the tools in regards to standardized work, 5S visual management, value stream mapping, Kaizen, those types of tools. Then we have a wave 3 that's in development now, but probably still a couple years off. That's what we're calling more the advanced manufacturing tools. That falls into line of more the value add, or more the tools around procurement, tools around more the value chain. So those are still being developed now. But for us, and it is the phased approach, so we want to make sure we kind of are able to crawl, walk, and run. So we kind of look at the developmental piece or the foundational piece as being the crawling. You got to be able to crawl. And then we're at the period now where we're able to walk. And so as we continue to go, and we've been able, and again, this is something that's been developed with, we've got folks from a lot of different industries that are now in Sonova with a lot of different backgrounds and different operating systems. So we feel like we've been able to take kind of the best of all of these and kind of create something that works for us. But that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's kind of the deployment model we use. And we also manage that with like a maturity assessment as well. So we develop a maturity assessment within our operational teams, and then this is how they're able to judge the deployment of the tools specifically and make sure we have a consistent deployment across all the sites.
Makes sense. One other question, Doug. Do you, in your plants, it is an environment more of a process industry or assembly? Process is more capital intensive, assembly is more people intensive. So, or you have.
I would say it's much more assembly generally. Now we do have some process as well, but I would say more assembly for sure.
Okay. So I'd like now to ask you about the use of Kaizen, Gemba Kaizen events, learning by doing, and also to use this as a deployment tool. By Kaizen events, I mean the typical Toyota 5-day or 3 to 5 day. We don't need to do 5 days, but if it is a big event, could be 5 days with the preparation before and 90-day plan after to close. So Yvonne, can you comment on this? Are you using this? How you use this?
We definitely use it, and I find myself in quite some regular conversations about I can't take 5 days out from my job to work on a Kaizen. And especially when you're sitting across from a sales or commercial team, and they say, you really want me to be away from the customer for 5 days? That becomes a real valid question, right? I think what we've managed to do in Sonova is to find a balance between when do we on purpose do 5 days Kaizens for the purpose of teaching the organization what good looks like? And what's the power of really going through to the point of burning bridges, putting the stuff in place, and it works on the Monday, versus sometimes then also doing an accelerated Kaizen where we might not go the full 5 days and we leave ourselves a little bit of work on the newspaper, or we might even split it up into a value stream mapping being done first and then followed up a couple of weeks later, just to be more dynamic around what the business needs at that particular moment in time. But I think what we're pretty proud of in Sonova is that 5 years in, we're still having at least 1 week a year where our entire management team, from the CEO down, takes a week out into what we call Management Board Kaizen Week. It's hosted all around our businesses. We just came out of sustainment of the last one this week, announcing our global winner, and we had 150 people full-time in Kaizens, 13 Kaizens in parallel, impact on all of our major metrics from revenue through to profitability through to our ESG targets. And the way we set those up is really as an event, really. I always call it the biggest marketing event that we have. But I'm from sales, so my team often hears about, we have a product called continuous improvement that we need to sell to the organization. So where's our marketing events? Where's our lead generation? And the Kaizen week is really our marketing event where we can show them the value of what the approaches can bring to the business. But what we also do in these events is, as I said, our management team takes the entire week out to role model, to coach, teach, be present, show respect for the people, make sure those teams are really delivering the impact, and that any roadblocks they might be hitting are removed, and they can get to their results. Right now, we're in the process of actually cascading this down. So every business unit is now hosting their own Kaizen week, so that step by step, all our leaders spend at least 1 week full-time in those Kaizens after they've already done a couple of weeks of immersion and regular training. And they start to become the teachers. They start to become the coaches who are not just joining and attending, but the ones who are really having skin in the game and helping their teams succeed. But I think for us, especially on the commercial side, it's really this balance about when do you do the textbook through 12 weeks sustainment, weekly sustainment calls, making sure you have your boulders, you have your problem solving to teach the organization the power of Kaizen, but then also being pragmatic around when can you maybe do an accelerated event.
Yeah, very interesting insights, and the word you use is really good, accelerated, the five-day Kaizen event is an accelerated event. And also another thing is a balance between doing this, and just implementing on a daily basis with the team, because you cannot do all the deployment with Kaizen events. Some companies try to do it, but I don't believe on that because it's very heavy for the organization, for the company. So a kind of the path of the middle, like in the Zen philosophy, where you balance, the accelerated with other type of implementation. It's a good approach, I think. What about in your areas, Doug? About Kaizen events, are you doing the same or slightly different or completely different?
Well, obviously everybody's involved in the management board Kaizens. So that's the entire company. So we all support that one. In regards to full week Kaizens and those types of things, we do a ton of those. And we're doing well over 100 plus Kaizen events a year in operations, and on average, most of our manufacturing sites are doing one full Kaizen a month. So you generally, I mean, you've got a perpetual, you know, thing of Kaizen events that are done throughout the organization. So I think for us, and the good thing for, I think, the ops team, especially now, is we're at a position now where we're starting to also identify other Kaizen leaders. So it's not just our continuous improvement folks that are now doing Kaizens. We've been able to identify a lot of supervisors, team leaders that have the skill set to be able to run Kaizens on their own. And that's been able to really help us utilize some of our CI folks on some specific, you know, business activities and those types of things. So we do a ton of the Kaizens. We're also morphing to some of the more just do it's as well. So we also do, there's an awful lot of just do it activities that are done as well, not formal Kaizen events and those types of things. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in regards of the full number of Kaizens going to more maybe just do it's, but that's still going to take a little time. I think that's a process. But, you know, on average, we do a ton of these. And again, usually our Fridays are quite busy with a lot of the Kaizen report outs that we do. So combination of, and we're getting better. There's in the back office, probably in the 3 corporate functions that I have under continuous improvement, they're certainly not at the same rate as what our factories are doing. So we have them on a shorter cadence of Kaizens, just so we can make sure they get the full understanding. So they're a little bit behind in regards to that, but starting to make some progress.
Yeah. I always talk about you, Doug, like doing this in manufacturing operation, but you also have transactional areas like human resources.
Yeah.
And they have a different type of Kaizen because you cannot see the Gemba, but you can map the Gemba, of course.
Exactly. Right.
And you can discuss the wastes and you can discuss the improvements, of course.
Yep.
And the next topic is about leadership immersion, or what we call usually top management engagement and commitment. You already told us a little bit about this with Management Board Kaizen Week. That is really cool because many companies don't have it. And supposedly they are very good in continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure there are other things, and I would like to ask you, what is more important? Maybe this is a silly question, but comparing CEO commitment with top management commitment, how do you rate that?
So I'll start, then I'll let Yvonne jump in. I think it has to be the CEO first. So I think you have to have, now that doesn't mean that the CEO has to be so embedded into the deployment, but I think you have to have a CEO that has a good understanding of what exactly the benefits are going to be of that. And they have to set the expectation from a leadership standpoint. And basically they have to almost think that they own, you know, this operating system within their company. So I've been on both sides to where I've, some of the past companies I've worked for, you know, where I've seen where maybe CEO commitment isn't as high. And then I've also seen where CEO commitment is very high. I think there's a significant difference in how the overall deployment goes. So I think it starts at the top. So for me, it's CEO commitment has to be there. And then if you have a good CEO commitment, I think over time, you will certainly have a senior leadership commitment. Yes. At least that's kind of my thoughts with that.
Things will be much easier if they start from the top.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I haven't seen it work as well if you really don't have an investment from the CEO. It doesn't seem to last long term.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree. And I think there's one interesting addition to this, though, that I've seen companies go through. It's from this point of commitment to actually, what does that commitment manifest itself in? So is it the person who shows up for the Kaizen report outs? That's already fantastic. But how do you translate commitment into tangible, visible things that those leaders also role model to the rest of the organization? And I think especially in industries or in areas that are not maybe as process driven, well, these people are, every one of us is in their roles because they've been very successful doing the things that they've been doing. And now those strange continuous improvement people come in and they ask them to coach and lead and ask problem solving questions. So it's also a question of how do you translate that commitment into a part of enabling the leaders to adopt some of the things that they might not initially feel comfortable with it, because it might be a bit different to how they've been leading in the past, so that they can also really just role model in addition to doing other forms of commitment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine that commercial manager or commercial VP or president, if he really understands Kaizen and Lean, he can really improve their own processes, and of course, big impact on sales, revenue, and all the funnel that is behind that. But of course, they need to really be our role models, as you said, and really committed and real understanding not only the philosophy, but also the basic tools of daily management with solve problem solving and so on. So what about, you talked about the management board, Kaizen. Can you give me other examples of engaging the CEO?
So one is obviously the MB Kaizen week that we do, our management board Kaizen week. Another area that is fully driven by our management team is our strategy deployment cycles, our Hoshin Kanri cycles that really link back to what's our strategic objectives over the next couple of years. How do we translate that into tangible breakthrough process projects? And then again, having the rigor and the cadence of the monthly follow-ups, having the targets to improve, and leading different conversations with the teams about really the kind of the coaching kata of helping the teams get to better outcomes than they would have gotten if they just went about it in, let's say, maybe more traditional project management ways. So this is something that is very visible to the entire organization. The other thing that I've certainly seen done in Sonova quite well, and many other companies, it's just the articulation of the continuous learning and continuous improvement mindset in everything that we do, from town hall, investor presentations, through to our leadership principles that our CEO would issue and say, hey, this is how we live and breathe continuous improvement. And having him be the one who writes the articles, who posts internally and externally about this. So people continue to see him interact with the team, spending the week in Kaizen, traveling, and the first thing to do is to go to Gemba and see what happens at the real place, are definitely some of the things that make it very tangible to everybody in the organization, that it's just not something that is somewhere on a piece of paper, but it's really lived and breathed. And then from our end, on the more the practitioner side, so to speak, we have monthly and quarterly reviews with the CEO and our COO, where we go through where are we in the deployment, what's holding us back, what's the next phase that we want to get to. And then last but not least, as Doug already said, the Kaizen report out. There's always a high likelihood that the CEO or one of our senior managers will pop in just for the report out and give the respect and the recognition back to the team. So those are some very tangible things that you can really build into your leadership standard work. And we sometimes have the conversation, hey, if somebody at the C-suite can make a week of time available for this, it's almost like there's really no excuse for anybody else in the organization not to find the time. So for me, that would be the best thing that I always recognize, is like just spending time with the teams.
Yeah, maybe that.
It came to my mind that maybe we can talk about CEO standard work. So can you?
Yeah, maybe to add one other thing to Yvonne's comments there, which were great. I think there's a couple of things also. One of them was that if you think about true CEO commitment during the management board Kaizen, our CEO actually did a 1.5-minute video in regards on the importance of leadership standard work. And so this is just a great example of the CEO not only just talking about leadership principles, talking about a operating system, but actually living it. So I think that's a cool example. And I think the other thing is it's super important that they do get involved, and the more involvement that they are able to have in the deployment of the system, the better they understand the system, the better off the results are going to be. And I think certainly we see that here at Sonova, especially with the leadership commitment that we've gotten so far.
And I also noticed that you talked about strategy deployment cycles. And of course, you talk about breakthrough projects. So I'm guessing and inferring that your Hoshin is really for the breakthrough, the vital few projects that can take the organization to another level in terms of the ambition of the organization. But the question is, those breakthrough projects, are they implemented also with Kaizen events, or they are implemented with, let's say, a phase gate project management standard way of changing the business?
And I can maybe speak from the more the growth one. So your assumption is absolutely right. It's the critical view on what's the moonshots that we need to land to really be ahead. Right now, if I look at the current cycle, I would say it's probably an 80-20. Most of the Hoshins would use a regular cadence of, call it daily management for lack of better words, on the targets to improve, regular structured problem solving, structured action plans, and then a series of Kaizens, initially creation Kaizens to build up the blueprint of what that process could look like, test it, try storm it, standardize it, and then work through deployment Kaizens. And that might be a year 2 or year 3 thing where you say, now that I have the standard work, how do I now deploy this across? If I look at one of our businesses, which has over 4,000 locations because they are a retail operation. So how do you take a blueprint that you've defined and really bring it out to 4,000 locations that will then work in that way? But we do also have 1 or 2 that are right now going through more of a traditional stage gate process. And fun fact, one of them is actually implementing stage gate process into a part of our development process. So I think it's even a kind of taking the best of both worlds, but the rigor, the discipline around action plans, bowlers, where are you with the metrics? Are you on the right trend? Where's the gap coming from? What are you going to try next? What's the next experiment that you want to do to see how we could get better? And what's the next thing you want to learn? You would definitely see that in all of them. Some of them we even take into what we call the management board Kaizen week. So we then also bring the formats together that people start to realize, hey, this is all like different views at the same thing. And it's really how we try to manifest the culture and get people away from just looking at it as there's one tool, there's another tool, but helping them to see how all the things really connect to each other. And that hopefully makes it a little bit less daunting for them.
And maybe this one is for Doug. But now, if the Hoshin starting with the CEO, and if so, how can you deploy to growth areas and to manufacturing areas? Is this a process starting from the corporation, or you have several Hoshin, several strategy deployment in different, I would say, areas of the business?
So as of now, it's generally more starting at the top from the CEO. So these are usually done on a yearly basis, and it's refreshed yearly to determine as far as which of the Hoshin Kanri activities from the previous year need to go forward. So there's a little bit of survivor series that happens in regards to trying to determine which ones to keep for another year versus which ones potentially that after you've had a year that have done some of the activities that you're at a position now where maybe the priorities changed. So, but in regards to, these are generally company-wide specifics that are led by the CEO and the management board. In regards to cascading that down much lower within the organization, I don't think so, not yet. So I think right now it's mostly driven at the CEO level with these top priorities. Some of the other companies I've worked for in the past have cascaded this down a lot farther down within the organizations, but this one here we tend to keep just at the high level, and these become just the high level company priorities for that year. And then we'll review those yearly to see if they continue or new ones that are added on, depending on how things go. And
I really agree with you, because for us, the Kaizen Institute, strategy deployment is not a cascading tool. It is not a cascading tool. You need to cascade KPIs for daily management.
Exactly, right.
That process of cascading is needed, because if you have a team in the shop floor following some KPIs, they must be linked to the top managed KPIs. But Hoshin is like Yvonne said, for the breakthrough projects, And then you don't need to cascade a lot, because otherwise you lose the sight of the project if everybody
Exactly.
a little bit. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so very, very interesting to see that you are using all the tools really in a very effective way.
Mm.
Good. Let's move to the final topic, and this is how do you assure or follow up CI delivering business impact, business results?
Right. So I'll start with this one, then Yvonne can jump in as well. So for us, we track benefits and we do this in a multitude of different ways. Obviously, at a site location, there's certain KPIs that and we follow basically a safety, quality, delivery, inventory, cost type of framework throughout the company in regards to KPIs that are associated with our activities. And what we do is we have standard bowlers, and these bowlers are tracked and reviewed on a monthly basis at the local level and the regional level. These include activities certainly like for us, obviously, optimization, waste reduction, those types of things tend to manifest itself in productivity savings. So we focus very heavily on productivity, direct productivity, also starting to focus more on indirect also, and obviously inventory. So all of these are tracked monthly at a site, then they're rolled up, and then on a quarterly basis, we have meetings with our CEO and COO to review progress on all of the sites. Obviously, we do deep dives when needed for these. And then also then we have one pagers, which we highlight some of our coolest Kaizens that have happened over the past few weeks and months that the teams want to have the senior leaders look at. So, but for us, it really is about, we know that these things that we're doing have to have a financial and tangible impact for the business leaders to continue to support these things. So it's important that we're able to do this. And also the other piece with this is that in a lot of these sites, we have somebody from finance that actually either is embedded into the Kaizen during the week. And I physically saw that when I was in one of our sites in Asia. The finance leader was actually in the Kaizen all week and was sitting there literally tracking progress and new calculations in regards to productivity and those types of things. But I would say all of our savings that we bring forward have been calculated and validated by our finance teams. And that way it makes it much easier for the leadership to look at these things and know that there's a tangible benefit coming from these.
Yes, the benefits tracking is absolutely necessary, and scorecards.
Absolutely.
The follow-up of the reports. Yvonne, can you comment on the growth areas?
Very similar actually to what Doc and the team are doing. I think the one thing we've been grappling with for the first couple of months, and honestly are still doing it today, is how do you isolate the benefit of those projects? Because it would be foolish for us to stand there and say, hey folks, this entire revenue increase, that's solely due to continuous improvement. There's all kinds of noise every time you touch the revenue pipeline, you touch the profitability pipeline, you touch your innovation pipeline. There's so many other things that are puts and takes that we really still have, honestly, some difficulties in isolating it back to saying what was really down to that particular Kaizen. Also, given that sometimes the timelines are a lot longer. If you touch, in some of our businesses, if you touch the innovation process, it's going to take 3 years until the new product is launched and you can really measure that impact. And until then, your jump off point and everything has moved. But the goal clearly is, same as with that, link it back to the P&L, have finance sign off, make sure that we can find all that money back in the P&L, be it on the revenue, on the impact side. And then along the way, at least start to have other metrics in place that are telling you whether you're moving in the right direction. But yeah, a little bit more noise around them that we need to still sort through.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that you talk about the noise and the difficulty in isolating the effect of a certain Kaizen or a certain improvement. But I guess that the ultimate benefit is the continuous improvement of the company results, of the company growth, and of the company profitability in terms of QCD. And I have to ask you, is Sonova doing well in that respect?
We are. And I think there is actually, if I may add, there's a third dimension which is very dear to my heart. But if we do, so Sonova has 17,000 people.
Mhm.
If what we do does not help people to go home a little bit less frustrated and a little bit more satisfied with their job every single day and a little bit more empowered to change their own work environment, then it's going to be very hard to build this into the culture. So I think there's the financial metrics that we're looking at, and I think we're on the right track, and there is always different situations out in the market, but there's also the element around how do our engagement scores develop? How does our retention of talent develop? Do we find the talent that wants to join the organization? And anecdote, Gemba evidence, I think every time we go out and we work with teams, there's very positive feedback, and people come back and say, we want to do more of that. So I would just offer that as an additional one. Don't underestimate the power of, are people switched on and are they seeing the benefit of this? It's just as valuable as your financial metrics.
And I would ask you also, Doug, about this, because many people say, you use Kaizen and you give more emphasis to the lean side of Kaizen. Lean meaning, oh, I have too much people, and now I eliminated waste, and I don't need people anymore. So Yvonne, you were talking about respect for people, and this has to be balanced or traded with results. So how do you do this in operations, Doug, if you find that you have too much people?
So we have ran across those instances in which through Kaizen, we have been able and we call it rescuing people. And so the one thing that we don't do is we don't do Kaizen with the purpose of basically eliminating people and sending them out the door. That doesn't happen. That's something that, quite honestly, I'm very proud of with this company here, is that's never really been the case. The good thing is that once we find ourselves maybe where we do have a little excess capacity or some folks that maybe aren't fully utilized, we do look and see from the standpoint of our contingent workforce if there's, one of the things that we've been able to do is we don't have to hire as many people because some of the productivity improvements that we've been able to do. So maybe from the contingent workforce and those types of things, we're able to maybe reduce some of the need of the contingent folks. But that being said, our full-time people and our team members, we make it very clear to them that this is not a game in which that we're out trying to make basically people redundant. That's not the case. That if you do that and people see that as the end game of your Kaizen, you've lost already, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important that we understand, and they understand exactly why we're doing Kaizen, and they understand that we're doing it because we've got to continually improve. Our competition's not standing still either. I'm sure of that. So we have to make sure, and we want people to understand exactly the reason behind the Kaizens we're doing, the improvements we're doing, why they're needed, and how important it is that they're a part of this. But at the end of the day, if we are able to have some folks maybe that we need to move to different jobs and those kinds of things, that puts us in a much better position. But we never go into any Kaizen thinking that we're going to be moving people and sending people out the door. That doesn't work. And I don't think personally from a standpoint that I would want to work at a company that did that.
Yes.
So for us, it really is about let's optimize the process as best we can. Let's make it as value added as possible. Okay. And if that means that we've got some folks and we need to be moving to other jobs or cross training into something else, okay, that's fine. But it's not about moving people out the door.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Fully agree. And I see that Sonova is really a Kaizen company where Kaizen is a way of managing the company. It's a management method with results and with respect for people.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So very good. So let's move and finalize with some, let's call it personal questions so that our audience get to know you better. And so what do you do to keep your body and mind fit and sharp? Yvonne.
I'm fortunate enough to live in Switzerland, so I spend every free minute out in the mountains. I exercise, and I do try to get enough sleep, which is a huge element of body and mind for me.
Yeah, a balance between professional and personal life so that you are at your best. And you, Doug?
So I like to run, you know, and exercise. I obviously don't run fast anymore, but I still like to get out and just, you know, move. Big sports fan also. So obviously in the US, a big college sports fan. So follow some of the sports teams around the local area. And then love music. So love listening to live music. So for me, just going to some place and listening to live music at night is a great thrill for me. So and even when I'm traveling, sometimes I'm looking around to see if there's any live music around I can go to. So those for me are the things I think that kind of try to keep me as sharp as I can be.
Yeah, on top of doing Kaizen, you also have other pleasures in life, and Kaizen is part of that. Yes, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the curiosity, I'm also a runner. I like to run outside, not inside.
Yeah,
but...
exactly. Too boring on the treadmill for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
What about business book? Your favorite business book?
So for me, I think David Mann's Creating a Lean Culture. I think for me, that's the one. If anybody ever starts thinking about going down the continuous improvement journey, talking about lean, thinking about lean, I just think that's the right book. It's an easy read in my mind, and it really it focuses on so many important aspects of the journey that you go through. So for me, that's it.
It's a good book. Thank you. Yvonne.
I have a tie actually between two books. One is Start with Why, and I said earlier, if you forget to explain to people the why of continuous improvement, go back to square one and start all over again. And then the second one is Let My People Go Surfing, which is from the founder of Patagonia. I'm a big mountaineer, and one of the things that I've taken out of this book to apply actually to lean is one of his most famous sentences is about the more you know, the less you need. And I sometimes tie that back to our tools in continuous improvement. If you're good at daily management and problem solving, it's like your Swiss Army knife that will probably get you through 80% of the problems. So I took a lot of learnings from that.
Yeah, very good metaphors. I think I will use it also. The Swiss knife, you know, the basic tools, and also connecting to nature. Yes, of course. And simplicity also, you know, you don't need very complex or sophisticated things to have results. What about podcasts? Are you listening? Do you have a favorite one, or do you use regularly or not?
Must admit, I'm in the age group that took to podcasts very late. So I'm definitely a laggard in this, but now I'm even more fascinated with it. My favorite one right now is the Prof G Show by Scott Galloway. Who's a professor at NYU and very good at taking analytics and realities of business and the world and put it into a spin where you go, I never thought about it this way. So I can definitely recommend this.
Can you tell the name of the podcast?
Yeah, it's Prof G. So Professor Galloway, Prof G, by Steve Galloway.
Okay, good. And you, Doug?
So I think The Economist. I love that you get a 22 to 24 minute daily version that comes out, and it's usually broken into 3 different segments that they have. So it's 7 or 8 or 9 minutes per segment of different topics. But I just think that's a fantastic one in regards to connect you with the rest of the world, what's going on. So I'm a big fan of The Economist on a daily basis. Love that one.
Yes, thank you. Of course, we are doing a podcast, so but we
I'll
also
add you to the list now.
Yeah, exactly. You're on our list now, man.
But we will also do some small clips of 2-3 minutes in the most interesting parts. And I think also people that don't have a lot of time to listen to the full hour, we can also get advantage from that. And who should be our next podcast guest and why?
So for me, I've got a gentleman. His name is Jon Stewart, and he's not the comedian from the Daily Show. He actually is a guy that I have highest respect for. He's the founder of a company called Middle Ground Capital. And so he started on the shop floor at Toyota, and it worked his way up over all these years to basically being a founder of a private equity firm. And just wonderful leader. He's taking really all of these aspects of his Toyota knowledge and the other knowledge and has really driven this into his company. And it's just fantastic. And I think having someone like him on there, especially from the private equity world, on how Kaizen continuous improvement means for them, I think that would be very valuable.
I think so. Can you say again the company?
Yeah, it's the company's name is Middle Ground Capital.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And you, Yvonne, who should be our next guest?
I don't have a specific name for you, but there's two areas that I'm very curious about, and maybe there's people out there who feel invited to join you. One is around taking the principles of lean into a retail and service environment, and how do you translate those concepts to kind of large shop scale. And the second one is around companies that have gone through a leader transition, so CEO transition, and have been successful in maintaining the continuous improvement mindset. Today, we talked a lot about the importance of CEO commitment. I know a number of companies where with the CEO change, the culture dwindled very quickly. I would love to learn from people who've successfully gone through that transition and what they've learned and what they can pass on to other people.
Yes, so it's a good suggestion. We will look for people that can talk about lean in retail and CEO transition. Looks good. And to finalize, can you address our audience directly and give them some advice or anything that could help them? Some really, let's say, interesting insight or advice that you could offer?
Sure. So
I would say keep it simple. Keep it simple, plain language. Don't make it overly complicated, but really bring it back to common sense. That would be one. And number two is don't confuse daily management and daily reporting.
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of daily reporting with everything performance indicators out there. There's very little daily management with key performance indicators out there. And if you get that right, that's going to really put you on the right path.
Thank you, Yvonne. Doug?
yeah, and I think a few things to add to that. I think don't underestimate the human element in regards to deploying any type of operating system, lean system within your business, whatever that is. That's the piece that will make you or break you. It's necessarily not the tools. The tools are quite honestly fairly basic for the most part. The tools you need to be successful long term are quite basic. But the piece that you can't underestimate is the human element and bringing the team on board. And if you don't spend the time doing that, I think your payback's going to be very low. So that for me is probably over 30 years of doing this. The biggest thing is don't underestimate that. Make sure you have a very solid change management program in place. Support that 100%. And then, as Yvonne mentioned, keep it simple in your deployment. You don't need to be too complicated with it. And then once you start getting the understanding of the tools, then you can move on. So, and the last piece would be go deep versus wide. So meaning that make sure people have a good understanding of something they're doing before you go on and try to, plaster it across your whole entire organization. Get it right in a pilot, and then you can move on and then transfer that throughout.
Yes, very good, very interesting. Thank you very much to both of you. It was really good, and I think now I will start thinking about buying stock from Sonova in the stock exchange. Because, yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yep, thank you.